On the night of October 17th, 2018, in the small wooded town of Emery Creek, the rain started around 6:30 p.m., light at first, just enough to streak the windscreen. But by 8 o'clock, it had turned steady, cold, and heavy. Most of the town had already settled in for the night. Porch lights flicked on across quiet neighborhoods, wind pushed against old shutters, the local high school's football practice had ended early, and parents were picking up kids, all except one. 17-year-old Jordan Miles had told his mom he didn't need a ride. He said he'd walk. The school was only a 15-minute trek, and he'd done it dozens of times before. Danielle Miles, his mother, remembered hesitating, not because of the weather, but because of a feeling she still can't explain. She asked if he was sure. He smiled, said yeah, and pulled his hoodie over his head. That was the last time she saw her son. Jordan left school at 8:21 p.m. Several students recalled seeing him near the back lot, headphones in, texting as he walked. At 8:26 p.m., he turned off Sycamore Street and took the path behind the old maintenance yard. That was the shortcut, a narrow dirt trail leading to the storm tunnel under Highway 17. The tunnel itself was less than a quarter-mile long, a dark concrete chute barely tall enough to walk upright. Most kids in Emery Creek knew about it. Some avoided it. Others, like Orden, used it all the time. At 8:41 p.m., Jordan sent a text to his mom. "Almost there," she replied 2 minutes later. He never responded. Danielle assumed he'd gotten distracted or left his phone on silent. But by 9:10, when he still hadn't come home, she called. No answer. Then again, straight to voicemail. She tried to stay calm and told herself maybe he stopped at a friend's house or dropped his phone, but something in her chest had already started to crack open. By 9:30 p.m., she was driving his usual route. She went to school, checked the parking lot. Nothing, just puddles and dark corners. By 10:15, she'd called 911. Dispatch listed it as a possible missing juvenile. An officer was sent out to take a report. What the responding officer found first was Jordan's trail. Wet footprints leading to the mouth of the tunnel. Then, nothing. No prints on the other side. The tunnel itself echoed with water runoff. Flashlight beams hit nothing but graffiti, slick concrete, and dripping pipes. The officer called for backup. Within hours, the Emery Creek Police Department blocked off the tunnel and began a grid search. Floodlights were set up on both ends. K-9 units were called in by 1:30 a.m. Dogs picked up a scent inside the tunnel, but only briefly. About 100 yards in, the trail went cold. Some of the dogs became agitated, barking and pulling toward the northern wall, as if confused or hesitant. One handler said they refused to go further, not afraid, just unwilling. No one could explain it. At first, police considered the possibility that Jordan had slipped, fallen, or gotten injured and wandered off. But there were no scuff marks, no blood, no torn clothing. By sunrise, nearly 30 volunteers had joined the search. A helicopter scanned the woods for heat signatures. Drones were deployed. Every hour, the timeline grew more urgent and less logical. Jordan was a straight B student, no history of running away, no behavioral flags. His phone stopped pinging shortly after the last text, suggesting it either died or was destroyed. His bank card and accounts remained untouched. He had no cash on him, no bag, just a phone, hoodie, jeans, and worn-out sneakers. By day 2, local media picked up the story. Volunteers came from surrounding towns. Dozens combed the woods around Highway 17, some waist-deep in brush and drainage. Still nothing. No sign of struggle, no indication of where or how he could have disappeared. On day 3, the FBI was contacted but declined to assist due to no confirmed abduction. Search efforts narrowed. The tunnel became a focal point. Engineers were brought in to scan the concrete for structural damage. There were no collapses, no openings, no hidden compartments, but still, no Jordan. By day 5, the theory of foul play became harder to ignore. Police canvassed nearby homes, interviewed classmates, pulled traffic cams from nearby intersections. At 8:43 p.m., 2 minutes after Jordan's final text, a grainy camera caught a car speeding out of the service road near the tunnel. No license plate, no make or model, Just headlights and a silhouette. Investigators flagged it, but it led nowhere. Emery Creek was a small place. People talked. Whispers started. About the tunnel, about the woods, about what could be hiding underneath. Some believed Jordan had been taken. Others thought he ran away. A few thought he simply got lost and succumbed to the elements. But most agreed on one thing. Something about this wasn't right. And then, silence. The official search was suspended after 10 days. Resources were pulled. The tunnel was reopened. For a while, people avoided it. Then, slowly, life moved on. But Jordan's mother didn't. She drove past the tunnel almost every night, sat in her car with the engine off, watching, listening, hoping. She swore once around 2 a.m. she saw a faint light flicker from the darkness, just for a moment. Then nothing. The town chalked it up to grief. But she knew her son. She knew he was in there. And something about the way the dog stopped, the way the tunnel swallowed the sound. It all felt like the beginning of something they hadn't seen the end of. Not yet. Before Jordan Miles vanished, the tunnel was just part of the background noise of Emery Creek, something locals knew, avoided, and joked about. It wasn't haunted, not officially, but everyone knew it felt off. Built in 1963 as part of the town's stormwater infrastructure, it ran just under a quarter-mile beneath Highway 17, linking the west end of Sycamore Street to the patchy woods that backed up to the middle school soccer fields. On paper, it was nothing more than a large concrete drainage pipe, roughly 6 feet in diameter, with a gravel base, iron reinforcements, and 2 manhole escape vents spaced 200 feet apart. It wasn't designed for pedestrian use, but over time, it became just that. Most of the town's older kids knew about the tunnel. Generations of teenagers had used it as a shortcut, some to sneak off campus, others to cut through the woods to get to fast food spots on the other side of town. Some tagged the walls with graffiti. A few brought speakers and told stories in the dark just to scare freshmen. It was a rite of passage, not a landmark. And despite the rumors that it was cursed, that it had collapsed once, that someone had drowned in it during a flood, there had never been an actual incident. Not until Jordan. After his disappearance, the tunnel stopped being a shortcut and became something else entirely. Police closed it off by midnight that first night. Yellow tape stretched across both ends. Floodlights were set up. Officers stood at each entrance while others waded in with flashlights and radios. But no matter how far they searched, there was no trace of Jordan. Just soaked footprints that faded on the slick concrete and that last known text message. Almost there. By sunrise, the town had started talking. The tunnel wasn't just part of the story. It was the story. Danielle Miles, Jordan's mother, mentioned it in every interview. The idea that her son had entered something so familiar and simply never come out was too much for people to make sense of. That kind of disappearance didn't fit the town's narrative. People didn't just vanish from one end of a known structure without being seen on the other. And yet, that's exactly what happened. Search teams entered the tunnel repeatedly over the following days. They checked for structural failures, hidden crawl spaces, and even loose grates. Nothing stood out. The interior was covered in graffiti, most of it years old. Phrases like, "keep walking," "don't stop," and "turn back now," covered the walls in neon green and white spray paint, more urban legend than clue. But the writing fed into a growing sense of unease, especially among the volunteers. Some said it felt colder inside than it should. Others complained their radios crackled or lost signal the deeper they went. One officer, on record but off camera, said it felt like the air just stopped moving about halfway in. Then came the dogs. On the second day of the search, 2 K9 units from a neighboring county were brought in, trained search and rescue German shepherds. Their handlers took them to the tunnel entrance near the woods, where Jordan's footprints had last been seen. The first dog, Rex, followed the scent in, alerting about 50 yards down. Then, according to the report, he stopped, barked once, and refused to move forward. His handler tried to coax him deeper, but the dog sat down and wouldn't budge. The second dog, Zara, reacted almost identically, tail tucked, ears down, whining softly. She backed out of the tunnel entirely. Neither dog had ever done that on a search before. Handlers logged it as inconclusive canine behavior, but it shook the team. Combined with the absence of any tracks or debris past that point, investigators began to wonder whether something or someone had been waiting inside. The working theory was that if foul play occurred, it likely happened inside the tunnel. But without blood, clothing, or signs of a struggle, the theory was hard to support. Still, people noticed the dogs. And in a small town like Emery Creek, details like that become lore almost overnight. By the end of that week, the tunnel had become a symbol, not just of the case, but of something darker, something people didn't want to admit out loud. Parents forbade their kids from going near it. Some community members petitioned to have it filled in or gated off. Others left small lights at the entrances, as if trying to offer Jordan a way out. Candle vigils were held on both ends. Danielle attended everyone. She stood silently, watching the entrance as if her son might just walk out of it. The structure itself was inspected by civil engineers from the county. Reports showed no signs of recent collapse, no hidden shafts, and no accessible storm grates beyond the two sealed manholes. It was, as far as they were concerned, a dead-end pipe. But when searchers stood inside, especially past the halfway point, most admitted to feeling watched, not from behind. From ahead, somewhere deep in the dark. Journalists started calling it the Hollow. Podcasters dug up old police logs and discovered a series of calls from years earlier, all unrelated but all centered around the tunnel. Strange noises. Someone is screaming underground. The lights are flickering with no power sources nearby. None of the reports had been followed up. Most were dismissed as pranks or weather-related, but now they were part of the growing narrative. Police were cautious not to speculate publicly, but privately, the tunnel had become a headache. It offered no answers, just silence. No matter how many times it was searched, how many theories were floated, it remained exactly as it had always been, cold, echoing, and empty. But that emptiness was the problem, because if Jordan had entered it and never come out the other side, then what was inside that they hadn't found? And if the tunnel wasn't the answer, then the town had to face something worse. Maybe someone else had been waiting in the dark. By the morning of October 18th, the search for Jordan Miles had shifted from urgent to desperate. The town of Emery Creek hadn't seen anything like it in decades. What began as a local missing persons alert had grown into a full-scale operation. Within 24 hours, over 200 volunteers had assembled, neighbors, teachers, classmates, even total strangers, all combing the woods, the fields, and the creek beds that bordered the tunnel. They were joined by multiple police units, search and rescue specialists, and 4 separate K-9 teams brought in from 2 surrounding counties. What united them all was a single question no one could answer. How does a 17-year-old walk into a tunnel and vanish? They searched in shifts, working through the night in rotating teams. Every square foot of the area around the tunnel was covered, the dirt trail leading up to it, the manhole access covers, the drainage ditches that twisted off like fingers into the woods. Nothing. No discarded hoodie, no shoe prints leading away, no broken phone. It was as if Jordan had been erased in motion. Cadaver dogs were deployed early on the second day. 2 were led through the west entrance of the tunnel, the same one where Jordan's footprints had first been seen. They both responded roughly 100 yards in, about halfway through. Handlers described it as a soft alert, meaning the dogs showed behavioral signs of detecting human decomposition, but without strong or sustained engagement. It wasn't a false alert, but it wasn't conclusive either. The dogs circled, whined, and then stopped, their noses tracing the air along the upper curvature of the tunnel wall. Then, nothing. The scent disappeared. Search leaders marked the area and brought in additional equipment, ground-penetrating radar, infrared scanners, and thermal drones. They swept the land surrounding the tunnel for irregularities. One team focused on the possibility of an underground cavity or abandoned storm channel that may have collapsed. But the scans came back clean. There were no voids, no sinkholes, no hidden compartments. What they found was exactly what was expected. A straight, intact tunnel, fully enclosed, ending in an exit that Jordan never reached. That discovery only deepened the fear, because it left investigators with 2 working theories. neither of which made sense.